In this video, I'm gonna show you a drum layering technique to make your live drums sound much bigger, just like this drum fill here. In this video, I'm gonna show you two different examples. We're gonna have a look at these toms first, and then we're gonna have a look at how to do this with a kick drum as well. Now, this is gonna be a little bit more technical and scientific, but basically I started off with this live tom here from Addictive Drums 2. Sounds like this, not very punchy, but a very characterful tom sound. Now, to beef this up, I created an artificial double of the tom. Now, what does that mean? Basically, I synthesized or re-synthesized this tom using serum, but a very basic patch. So basically, it's just a sine wave, as you can see here, with a pitch envelope that behaves the same way as my live tom. Now, I also have a little harmonic layer which helps with the attack, and then a noisy layer makes the bright part of the attack. But essentially this is an artificial double of my live tom. It doesn't sound very exciting, but you can hear it has that punch which the live tom doesn't. Now when we combine these two, we get a really interesting result. So now we have a punchy tom that also sounds live by leveraging the synthesized tom and basically beefing it up. Now, why is that working so well? It's actually pretty simple because you can see it in the waveform. I rendered those toms out here. This is the synth tom and this is the live tom. And you can see in the waveform that my synth tom has a very, very clean waveform. It's a sine wave that doesn't get interrupted in the phase. If you have an interruption in the phase, that usually feels kind of weak in the way the drum punches. But if you have a clean waveform that doesn't have many interruptions, you usually have a really punchy drum sound. Now you can see in the live toms that's not the case. We don't really have a clean sound, and you can see many interruptions in the phase caused by different harmonics here, which is very important to get that characterful sound, but you're not gonna get the punchiness which the live toms have. So that's basically the scientific explanation behind why these layering techniques work so well. Now what we can also do is, if we zoom in here, we can flip the phase. So basically we're flipping the phase of the waveform, and that completely changes how it will interact with the live tom. Now I'm gonna play this back for you on these two here, and you're gonna hear how different it actually sounds if I flip the phase on the synth tom. You need headphones to hear this, but the flipped phase actually helps a lot with the punch. Now the good thing about this is that I can prove this to you on a waveform. You don't actually need to hear that. Let me show you how that actually looks like. You can see the lower waveform has some weird stuff happening because of the phase which is interacting and causing this weird behavior here that the volume goes down and goes up again, and there's all sorts of this weird stuff. Where you can see in the upper one, it's much more consistent. Like this tom is a really big sounding tom because it's very consistent in the volume, and the same goes for here. The reason why I think this is so important is if you do these things right before you start to process the sounds, you're gonna have a much better impact. These are like kind of the foundational things. It's like when you record something, if the recorded take is just really good, you don't really have to make up for that with processing later on. Now, of course, I'm processing this as well. So there's a rack which has this gated reverb, putting OTT on here as well. And then on my drum bus, I have the UAD Pultec EQ, beefing everything up a little bit more, and then another instance of OTT. And all of a sudden, we get this huge tom sound. Incredible, right? But if I would mute the synth tom, it's still really big, but it's not that punchy. And this is basically the power of adding a artificial synthesized clone of the actual sound. Now I'm gonna show you a similar example of how to do this with a kick drum. So next we're gonna have a look at the drums from this new Bruno Mars song, which is pretty much everywhere on the radio. And it has this really nice kick drum, which is live, but also really punchy. And so again, I'm using Addictive Drums, and I have this drum pattern here, some hi-hats, and the kick and the snare. One way is what I just showed you, is to synthesize a duplicate basically. But it doesn't need to be that complicated. Obviously I have this kick, there's some processing on it, But look at this flexi channel. When I trigger the kick, there's also something else happening. And so I started with this kick drum and like find the right pitch for it. But then I felt like it wasn't really enough. And if you look on the EQ up here, look at this very low frequency here. It's a super simple technique. And this kick drum, what do you hear? It's a super simple kick drum, but it just blends so well because it gives the kick what it needs. The live drums always have the character, but they often lack the punch, which you can make up for by really clean sounding drum samples like this kick or this tom I showed you before. Now on top of that, I'm also layering in another kick sample, which I picked here, which is this one. Now the difference is actually not that big when I layer this in. But you can hear the punch becomes stronger. Now I'm gonna mute the 2 extra kicks and I'm gonna play that back with the instruments, and then afterwards I'm gonna put them back in, and you're gonna hear the differences, how the layering basically turns this from a weak kick drum to basically something you would hear on the radio. It just sounds so much bigger. If you just didn't hear the difference, I highly encourage you to listen to this again on headphones or some big speakers, because it does make quite a big difference in the mix, even though it's not so noticeable when you listen to it in solo. And I wanted to make this video to show you that when you layer sounds, you should do it with a purpose. You should add a layer to your sound because your sound is lacking something, and you add that with an additional layer. And I think these are great examples of showing you how you can support your drums using just very simple artificial clones of your main sound. Now all the drums I just showed you are available in our brand new drum collection, Billboard drums. It's basically based off 27 drum kits based off the biggest hits of the past years. It's incredible drum collection for pop drum production and pop music production. We currently have an intro deal running, so make sure you take advantage of that. And yeah, thanks for watching.